So that's right, Shane. I guess it probably doesn't really matter. You're Canadian, so it doesn't matter as much to you when the cold comes rolling in. Because I was sitting there, I was watching the Cubs today, and it is glaring when Wrigley Field is pretty empty. And I understand it was I actually jumped in around the eighth inning, and it was 6-1 Texas and everything. And they're like, yeah, but still. And our friends over at Marquee, I'm like, dude, I'm just not used to Wrigley Field being that empty. Comiskey, sure. Wrigley Field, not so much, but apparently there's some sort of ice storm coming in. And then I'm sure everybody is battening, although my friend is also a recent transplant. So I'm curious if this ice storm is something that's like that, if it even registers with anybody else who still lives out in Chicago. Because I know my relatives out there like, hey, how's it going? You ready for and they're like, what ice storm? It's always cold. It's not that big a deal. But anyways, what is a big deal is that the Bears got back to work this week, and we're ready to talk about it. So, Shane, let's go ahead and start the show.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast with Adam Ray.
It's Hester trying to work it back to the middle. Gets past the first wave, and here he goes. It's Hester inside the 30. Hester's going to take it all the way for a touchdown. And no flag, 92 yards.
The sickest Chicago Bears and fantasy football podcast. Sports entertainment like no other. It's gonna be sick.
It's Wednesday night. You know what that means? It is time for Take It to the Rank. A great night of sports coverage. Not only do we have, I don't know if it's the entirety of the final of the Challenge All-Stars. Adam and Steve made it to TJ's final. That's huge. AEW has been killing it, by the way. AEW has been really good. As much as we like WWE and the WrestleMania is coming up, AEW, like, objectively has been very good over the last couple of weeks. And, of course, a special appearance tonight on the Tape Never Lies Network. It's going to be me at about 8 East. What's the time zone? 8 Eastern? I don't know. 5 here. I think it's 8 Eastern. I don't know. Time zones baffle me, but what doesn't baffle me is my co-host, my good friend Greg Braggs, who joins us right now. How are you holding in? How's the great ice storm going? Do you care anymore?
No, I do not care. I stopped caring about the weather 3 years ago when I stopped playing brick. I know, it's lucky me. That's the most corporate thing you'll hear from me today. But you start off the show by lying, by saying I never baffle you. There's no way that.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, that's true. Because do you like Maid or Swingers? That's true. I forgot about your bit.
Yeah,
your Maid bit.
It's not a bit. It's a
bit.
And there are legions of us that feel the same
nobody.
way, sir.
Nobody feels that way.
There are dozens of us.
Dozens of you. That is my favorite bit of all time. The Maid is better than Swingers.
Yes.
Although I don't think Swingers is as good as everybody makes it out to be. There are times where you watch that and you're like, oh God. Bogs down at times.
You're halfway.
That doesn't mean, but it doesn't mean
listen,
it still doesn't mean that it's better than it's worse than Maid.
Oh boy.
P. Diddy yelling. I think it's the problematic part with P. Diddy just yelling at people. Yes. And being like, yeah. That's what, like, again, I think I mentioned it last time we mentioned this movie talking about Get Him to the Greek, which is a movie that I really enjoyed. And I saw it in the movie theater. Really loved it. And then you're like, yeah, I can't watch it anymore. There's two people I find objectively horrible now in that movie.
Well, that part is different and a newer revelation to my Maid take. So that is an unfortunate circumstance. Yes.
Yeah. I actually saw Maid in the theater as well. So that was back. There's an era, like that era of like still being in the dating world. Mm-hmm. You forget about that. You're like, oh yeah, like the 90s, the early 2000s. You're like, yeah, I was still dating. So I would go to movies like all the time. I would take a chance on something like Maid because I liked Swingers. But in any event, enough of that. You know what? I've got the, like I mentioned before, I'm going to do the Tape Never Lies Network. Mm-hmm. I got a new idea for whenever I go on that show. And I don't want to do the Irish hello, which is, for anybody who doesn't know, I want to Irish hello them, which I'm actually going to Irish hello my acceptance for some award I'm winning at Cal State Fullerton because they're giving me an award the first night of the NFL draft. Like, hey, we're going to give you an award. Like, this is awesome. Thank you so much. I'm so honored. When are you doing this? April 24th. I'm like, of course. Whatever. Not offended at all. That's their way of just like, hey, give us money. We don't really want to give you an award, but we're going to say what we do. They thought it was too obvious that they would have given it to me like on Super Bowl Sunday. So they picked the night of the draft, which I think is a good move. So I'm an Irish hello. I'm going to pre-record something and send it to them. I think for the tape never lies, and you've been on this show too, it's kind of like when you have your relatives that have the long goodbyes. Mm-hmm. I think I start off with the goodbye. Like, hey guys, yeah, I can only be here for a few minutes. And then just set the wheels in motion that way. And then maybe about an hour in, my internet connection cuts off. Like, oh, wow, the ice storm's coming in, and then just cut it off. What do you think?
Interesting technique. Yeah, I am definitely notorious for the Midwestern goodbye. I say goodbye probably 17 times on shows and when people are over at my house. So This is interesting. I've never learned this technique of the Irish hello. I know you start the show. So one thing I love about this show is, like, I'm always so nervous, and every show I ever do, and when it starts, there's the countdown and the cold open and then the next open, and you're already talking as the show starts. And I think, like, I've seen that before, different technique, but you're the first show I've ever done that where I've actually been on a show where somebody does that. So
yes,
interesting. So that's probably how you go right into it. Don't even let
go right into it.
Don't even let Phil start with the soliloquies and the pleasantries.
I don't want a musical introduction. I want
you're gonna get with Phil. You're getting a musical introduction. That's for sure. With some kind of subtle jab at Kyle Brandt or K.
That's never uncomfortable. That's never uncomfortable when he just sits there. Him and Shane, not the Shane who's producing our show here today, but we'll sit there and they'll be like just taking shots at people at the NFL Network. You're like, you understand? Like, not only are they my colleagues, coworkers, most of them are my friends. There's a couple of people I've given them the list. I'm like, here's the guys you can rag on. No, I'm kidding. But it's funny because it's like, dude, like I'm friends with him. People do that too with like people like that I'm on the fantasy show with. Mm-hmm. And they'll be like, hey, so-and-so sucks. You're like, hey, that's my friend. Don't say that. Most of the time it's going to be my friend. Don't say that.
The funniest part about Phil and Shane, especially Phil, they can't understand a world where somebody that has a bad football take can be a good person, which is crazy because they're friends with me. They literally are friends with me, and I have terrible football takes, and they have to claim me as a friend. So you'd think they'd understand it, but
yeah. Speaking of terrible football takes, I was on the Fox NFL football pod, and they're like, "Hey, rank the top 4 quarterbacks in the NFC North." Which, of course, you're like, well, you know that Caleb's number 1. There's no doubt about that. I guess the question is like, who's better, Jordan Love or Jared Goff? And people are confused. Like, you're basing this on the future, but looking at last year, I'm like, no. If it was based on last year, I think objectively, Jared Goff would have been the number 1 guy. I mean, I think Jared Goff, his team was the number 1 seed in the NFC, had a very good year. I was actually looking ahead and thinking about, like, by the end of 2025, when we look at the quarterbacks in the NFC North, I guess it wasn't because I didn't do anything with JJ McCarthy because I'm like, that's too difficult. We don't even know if he's going to start. Like, what if they trade for Kirk Cousins or sign Aaron Rodgers? So it's not really fair. But I'm like, I think Caleb will be number 1, and I think Love. I just think that there's going to be a lot of regression with Jared Goff. Where do you put the quarterbacks of the NFC North?
Wow. I mean,
this is funny because I didn't even prepare you for this.
You know what? And I'm going to reverse meatball you here. I normally will follow you to the depths of the earth to be the meatball and cross any ocean to head to Meatball Island. But I'm in a full earn it off season. And so, he's not, I'm sorry. Caleb Williams I'm excited for his future. I think he has a very high ceiling to be as great as he wants to be in this league. And I think last year was a testament to show what his floor is. If that's the worst season he ever has in his career as a Chicago Bear, then we got a pretty damn good quarterback. But that being said, Jordan Love and Jared Goff are still ahead of him. Now, J.J. McCarthy, he's got to earn it too. He's got a pretty good coach there with Kevin O'Connell, who's shown they can get the most out of some very below average quarterbacks and some even average quarterbacks last year. Your guy, Sam Darnold, all due respect. And he turned himself from what he was widely considered as a average quarterback to an above average quarterback with an absolutely stellar year. So, but JJ McCarthy still got to earn that. So I say Caleb Williams is third in that pecking order. Now, who is first? I would say Jared Goff. The inconsistencies of Jordan Love, I think even Packers fans, have wring their hands at times. You got to see a little more consistency. He has a dynamic arm. He has, great anticipatory throws. There's some throws that you just go, wow. And then there's a lot of other throws where you're just shaking your head. Jared Goff, on the other hand, last year had games where he was like 19 of 19. And we all understand that, part of that formula was Ben Johnson, who we now have. And that's exciting as a Bears fan. But that doesn't take away from the fact that Jared Goff executed those things. So while Caleb Williams has had some really great things go for him this offseason, from all these coaching hires, starting with Ben Johnson, all these offensive linemen signed, including Joe Thuney, with the draft coming up, there's some really good things that are accumulating to set up for success for Caleb Williams. But he ultimately has to execute this vision, and he's got to earn that number one spot in my eyes.
Yeah, and my response to that would be like, meh, whatever. No, I'm just kidding. No, I'm kidding. No, it's true. And I was thinking about something that Ian Rappaport, actually, I was watching it before the show started, and Ian Rappaport's been filling in with for Peter Schrager, who is now moving on to, I don't know if they announced that he's moving on to ESPN, but it's obviously no longer with Good Morning Football. The whole notion of like Ben Johnson is going to make it uncomfortable for him because in order to grow, you got to work on some things that make you a little bit uncomfortable. As we sit here and we watch you, like for instance, you're going back to the gym, overtaking your life once again. And anybody who's ever done anything like that understands that, it's a long road and it doesn't happen overnight. And if you want it to be a lasting success, then you don't want it to happen overnight. You want to make small incremental steps that eventually lead you to where you want to be.
Yep.
And outside of the hubris and being the mayor, the hombre of Abondagas Island, Lido de Abondagas. How would it go? I don't know. Hold on. I gotta think of Lido de Abondagas. Somebody's gonna be upset. Like, stop speaking Spanish.
I like this though. Lido de Abondagas.
Stop speaking Spanish, Rank. I didn't take any formal training. I just sit here and I've lived in Southern California. So yeah, I guess but I can't stop myself. I might need a job from Fox Sports at some point. So I'm like, let me do something that's going to get you 500,000 views and a bunch of clicks. And I will tell people like, this is why we don't take your things seriously. I said, you know what? The people who say that, I'm like, you never take me seriously. You've never, like, I understand, like, I think most people be like, hey, when it comes to the Bears, I kind of tune you out, which is fair. But it's like, you never give me credit. Like, people never give me credit. Years ago, my mock, I'm going to be releasing my mock draft with a twist, and it'll come out. I don't know, this is very self-satisfying and grandiose for me. But I will say, like a couple of years ago, I said Justin Jefferson will end up winning Rookie of the Year if he goes to the right team. Don't pass on him, Philadelphia, who did pass on him for Jalen Reagor. He goes to Minnesota, Rookie of the Year. Last year, even saying the Raiders should take Brock Bowers. Very rarely do people come out. Now, my boy Q, who's in Las Vegas, who does radio, did point this out when I was last on his show and stuff. But like, people typically don't. They will never come back and be like, hey, you were right about that. Like, that's very rare. that people will be like, you were right. Wait, great job on Saquon Barkley. You were right. Like, it's very rare. So when people go like, I don't take your opinion seriously, you're like, yeah, okay, that's fair. I got fine. Like you never did anyways. Even when I'm right, you don't give me. Bucky Irving was great last year. Has anybody wandered? Nope, you don't. Okay, fine.
Well,
That's
you know what? We always are arguing about Made, and Vince Vaughn is one of my favorite actors. Obviously, Wedding Crashers, another all-time great quotable movie. You know, started even my youth in Rudy, right? You know, I think some people might forget that.
Oh, what is it? O'Hara. O'Hara, you just went from the third team to the practice squad. Get out of here.
But another very underrated movie is The Internship, right? And
God, I love that movie.
I love The Internship. And there's a point in that movie where the head of Google or one of the higher ups of Google that's going to make the decision on who to hire, he's just grilling Vince Vaughn, and he's doubting him. And what does Vince Vaughn say to him? He's like, sometimes the long shots pay off the biggest. And so that's your sweet spot, right? You're going for the long shot here. And so to me, I think the proper way of framing where you're trying to go to this is who has the highest potential this upcoming season. And potential is a hell of a drug. But at the same time, when you look at things right now and
the ice storm's already started. The ice storm has already come.
I'm sorry. So what I was going to say is Jared Goff still has the right to hold the top of that mountain. But at the same time, he has lost Ben Johnson. He's lost JT Barrett. He's lost Antoine Randall. The other side of the ball has lost Aaron Glenn. And Dan Campbell's going to have to pick up those pieces. Jordan Love, you know, you get another year down the road, the pressure continues to go up if he is worth the money they paid him. And fans get frustrated, especially up there in, Cheeseville, where they are in title town up there. And they think that they should always be much better than they ever really are, with the exception of the 2 years they won the Super Bowl. And so that puts a lot of pressure on Jordan Love to finally get over the hump. If not, then you're kind of treated the way guys like Dak Prescott, right, that get treated in Dallas. It starts to go the other way for you. Whereas Caleb Williams, this guy, you had a 10-game losing streak last year. So now you get Ben Johnson, you get this great team that comes in, you got a lot of skill. Maybe they get another offensive lineman. Maybe they get Ashton Genty. Who knows? You know, they're clearly going to get a running back at some point. And so maybe the proper argument is that Caleb Williams has the highest potential because of what is surrounding him. But again, he's got to earn it. I'm excited for it. I'm optimistic for everything that's coming this summer. But I'm not handing him anything because I want to see him earn it. And I think the worst thing that happened last year was the abundance of hype, not just from the fans, but within their own department. And you had receivers at this time last year arguing about who was going to get to 1,000 yards receiving first between the three of those guys. And they're super talented, but this stuff has to be earned. And I think for Caleb, when you heard him here 2 days ago or yesterday at Hallis Hall talking about all the things that he needs to get better at the line of scrimmage and within the pocket, I do think that there was an underestimation by Caleb Williams of just how hard it was going to be at the NFL level. And I also think there was an underestimation by the Bears of just how much work still had to be done for him to be ready to be great in the NFL. And obviously they had a huge miscalculation with Shane Waldron that plays a big part in this. So, I think they're on the right track, but, personnel is one half of the equation. The other half is these guys getting it done, executing, putting their head down and going to work starting right now.
No, and it is a big thing. And and again, hype is probably the worst thing. And again, Bears fans come out of nowhere and give this to me all the time. As a matter of fact, my niece was on a work trip out there in Kansas, and a couple of her colleagues found out who her uncle was, and they're like, we're Bears fans. So then she's texting me, being like, hey, my friend, I forgot his name. Sorry, Aaron. I think it's Aaron. He goes, hey, tell him to stop picking the Bears to win 12 games every year. And I'm like, can't stop, won't stop. It's not. And finally, she's sending all these text messages to be like, put him on the phone with me. I can't deal with it. I don't want to make you the mediary anymore, but I understand because people are like, we're doing this to ourselves by getting expectations so high, and that maybe we should just be like, we'll be lucky to win 6 games this year. If we win 6, but at the same time, there's players in that locker room who do not feel like they're a 6-win team, that feel like, why not us? Why can't we be a team that goes from the 2nd overall pick into the draft all the way into the NFC Championship game, like another team did this past season? So I get both sides of it. Sure. But I'm just saying that, I'm all in on Caleb. I'm purchasing all the sports cards. This is where I put the money. My money where my mouth is I go out there and I get all these Caleb Williams cards. And speaking of trading cards, at Windy City Sports Cards, they specialize in buying and selling all things related to Chicago sports. Whether you are a diehard fan of the Bears, Bulls, Cubs, White Sox, Blackhawks, Sky, Fire, they have got you covered with an extensive selection of sports memorabilia and collectibles. In addition to their Chicago-focused items, they also offer a vast collection of sports trading cards and memorabilia from your favorite team. Visit the online store to find exactly what you are looking for to complete your collectible collection or discover a new favorite. They pride themselves in providing top-notch customer service and ensuring that every transaction is smooth and satisfactory. And I can attest, working with Mike is one of the easiest things in the world. Windy City Sports Cards. Go out there. I do know that, speaking of AEW a moment ago, Upper Deck put out an AEW trading card set that I think I'm going to fire in on because now I'm back. I'm back into wrestling, back into cards, all that good stuff. But you talk about the prove it. The prove it, like you're in a stage where you want to prove it. Jaylen Johnson this week came out and had some words and kind of encapsulated everything that Chicago Bears fans feel, where it's like, hey, or a lot of them. It's one thing to say it. He's like, but I've been through many of regime changes here in Chicago. Now we got to go out there and see the results. What were your impressions of what Jaylon Johnson was talking about?
I mean, he's always kind of been that way. I think you heard a lot of those sentiments last year, but now it just kind of ups the ante. And working with Cole Kmet too, they both have been here longer than anybody, and they've been through a lot, and they've been through a few years where there's been some overhype heading into the season where they didn't live up to expectations. I mean, even Jaylen said it, like, yeah, we start out hot and then we crap the bed. He used a much different word, but he's wasn't mixing words either. So, yeah. I think, like you said, there's both sides of this coin where he says, hype's not going to win us anything. And hype, he said, hype don't win no games. Right. And then when they asked him, like, there's a lot of times where, reporters such as myself, right, would dial a guy up and to set up a great answer on a tee and like, hey, what was did Ben Johnson inspire you guys yesterday? And then you just throw all these, gas him up and pleasantries about your head coach. And he said, well, no, I just met him yesterday, so I don't know what kind of coach he's going to be until we get there into the summer and the bullets start flying. And so you like that mentality. Don't put the cart before the horse. At the same time, from a competitiveness standpoint, they're like, yeah, we want to dominate. That was the message from Ben Johnson, that we don't just want to win, we want to dominate. And Jaylen said, do you want to win by 7 or do you want to win by 70? And they're having a head coach coming in here from Detroit where they scored 70 touchdowns last year, and they were beating up on some teams. And so now Jaylon Johnson on the other side of the coin now has a defensive coordinator that's coming in that's going to let him play man coverage, which is what is his bread and butter that really he has not been able to do under Matt Eberflus. And credit to Jaylon Johnson, who, when you look back at the start of his career with Matt Eberflus put him on the second team, right? Eberflus' first summer as a head coach put him on the second team, maybe to send a message or whatever was going on, but obviously there was some friction. And he took that in stride, earned his way back into the starting lineup, obviously played well enough to earn that big contract he gets from Ryan Poles. And that's under a defense that's not even suited to his strengths. How many times you talk about Shane Marsaw from Tape Never Lies? This dude predicts every time when it's 3rd and 14 that the Bears, I'm like, oh, we got this. We're getting off the field. Shane's always texting or tweeting, the Bears are going to give this up because he knows that kind of defense doesn't suit guys like Jaylon Johnson, Tyreek Stevenson, and Kyler Gordon. Now you have Dennis Allen come in here. They're going to be able to play press man coverage, try to get to the quarterback, and I think that's going to be an exciting thing. But, yeah, Jaylen wasn't playing the hype game. So, for me, I love that, and I think we need more leadership like Jaylen's in that locker room.
No, absolutely. And I was going to ask about Dennis Allen, but you kind of
I'm sorry.
took it there. No. I'm intrigued, though, because when you think about this, and I'm curious how they feel about the pieces on the defensive side of the ball, because as you said, it feels like there's going to be an emphasis on having corners who can cover. Tyreek Stevenson obviously was he was one of the faces of the dysfunction of the Chicago Bears last season. As we start now looking at the draft, I know that you've been talking about which offensive lineman we are going to draft. I know you're more convinced than ever that we're going to go with an offensive lineman. And it's a sound idea, and I don't hate it at all. Do you think there's an opportunity? And it's not just Will Johnson. There's another guy too who is at the top of draft boards as a potential top 10 pick at corner. Could the Bears be doing something where just unheard of, where you're like, yep, here's Will Johnson with the number 10 overall pick?
I mean, if they do, I know.
Oh no, what are you going to do?
I know Shane's going to blow a gasket. And then I would say if they do, then Tyreek Stevenson is getting converted to safety. I wouldn't understand the logic there when you have 3 guys. And I know Tyreek still got a lot to prove for a lot of people and certainly a lot of fans after what happened last year in that Hail Mary game. But Tyreek Stevenson, I have not given up on. He is a good player, and he just needs the right direction and motivation to play with that consistency and play under control and harness that competitiveness that he has that you see not just in games, but if you go to training camp, you'll see it at practice. And I think a guy like Al Harris, defensive backs coach from Dallas, who, in Dallas, they were crying when they lost him because of how good of a coach he was. And we should know him. Any Bears fans should know who Al Harris is.
Oh, we're aware.
Right, from his playing days at Green Bay. And I think that if Al Harris is still the kind of coach that he was as a player, I think that's the kind of leader I think that will be very beneficial to a guy like Tyreek Stevenson. So, but Will Johnson, that means that everybody came off the board before 10 that you were looking at, whether it's Will Campbell and Mason Graham and Ashton Genty and Tyler Warren and maybe another offensive lineman, and you're at a point where your board is gone. So, and you can't trade back now you're trapped. And, Ryan Poles has always predicated on drafting, for those premium positions, and cornerback is one of the premium positions, but I don't know if Bears fans are going to be very happy if Will Johnson is the call.
I just want to make everybody ready, just preparing everybody for it. I get out of my skis talking about Caleb Williams being the best quarterback in the division. I think a lot of people are just similarly in the NFL draft, because I think Ryan Poles has shown us previously how much emphasis he puts on the secondary for his teams, considering some of the draft picks that he has made. I also, I think about it too, because to me, I don't think that Shedeur Sanders goes in the top 10, which is going to allow things to kind of bump down a little bit. I don't think anybody's trading up for Shedeur Sanders. And I would even venture a guess that I envision the Steelers sticking at their spot. And then if they don't take him, that Shedeur Sanders might not even get picked in the first round. Because remember, Kenny Pickett.
Can I give you my conspiracy theory here?
All right.
I know you're.
Oh wait, hold on. I'm gonna write this down, because we might be on the same. We might be on the same page. So
we might be. Yeah, conspiracy theory about Shedeur Sanders, because Adam Hogue was getting. I keep bringing up this scenario that Shedeur falls to 10, and then a team like the Steelers trades up to 10 to get him, and he's like, that's not going to happen, because if he falls to 10, why would the Steelers trade up? Because nobody else is behind the Bears is going to want him, so that nobody's going to trade up. I disagree. Who is the team right behind the Bears?
11 or 12?
12. The Dallas Cowboys. Bang. The Dallas Cowboys.
For those of you who are just listening to this as a podcast, I had written Sanders to the Cowboys.
Yes, like a somebody that
Karnak.
Yes, exactly. Karnak, and you
We're playing password. Where's Bert Convey?
You read my mind. The Dallas Cowboys hired Brian Schottenheimer
as a one and done coach.
As a one and done. They were courting Deion Sanders, who just got a big payday from the University of Colorado and the Colorado Buffaloes. Yeah. But that does not stop Deion Sanders from he does not have to stay at Colorado. And Dallas isn't beholden to Brian Schottenheimer and Dak Prescott. And they've been a sinking ship for years. It's like a slow sink. You've seen some of these players that have left here this season start to bring that up, and Micah Parsons is fighting with them on Twitter. Dallas Cowboys have a serious interest. He's not making it past 12 because the Cowboys will draft Shedeur Sanders and then next year hire Deion Sanders as the head coach. It's as clear as day. And if the Steelers are paying attention and they want Shedeur Sanders that bad, then they're going to have to trade up ahead of the Dallas Cowboys to 10 if they want him. Bang.
You know what? I love everything about this. And I almost put that in my piece, my mock draft with a twist. I did spend a lot of time looking at some of the salary cap ramifications for Dallas. They wouldn't be able to trade Dak Prescott this year, obviously. But at the same time, I think Dak Prescott is and Shedeur Sanders is somebody who you probably don't want to start this year anyways.
No.
So if you come in and just have Shedeur Sanders sit for a year behind Dak Prescott, and then next year, I don't know how much more feasible it would be that they would be able to move him, or even if it's not, like maybe you do like the Packers did with Jordan Love, where you have him sit 2 years, and Deion comes in and does it for another year, and Dak plays at least 2 more years with the Dallas Cowboys. I was so close to pulling the trigger on that. I will tell you that when I go on, I'll be on Mock Draft Live. This is actually one of the segments that we did because I don't know how much they'll edit it out of the piece because the editors at the NFL Network, they very much don't like how much like the liberties I take with things. Because I even feel like not only this, like this makes a lot of sense to me with the Cowboys taking Shedeur Sanders. I really love that idea.
Are you saying you're saying they're going to edit out any shout outs you give? And you don't have
to. You know what's funny is and I forgot to give Mark Carman a shout out the other day, and I had it written on a piece of paper, but our segment got blown up because I was so long-winded in a previous segment that I forgot because I wanted to ask Ian Rappaport how come he didn't give Mark Carman credit for the Case Keenum news.
Well, you don't ever have to worry about whether or not you're giving me proper due. I know you're always in my corner. Really, what I need from you is it's called the agenda. And I've had a trench drunk agenda where the Bears are going to draft an offensive lineman, but now we can create a new agenda. And that is to scare the living daylights out of the Pittsburgh Steelers that the reality of Shedeur Sanders to the Cowboys at 12, where they'll have no choice but to give a very similar trade package that the Bears once gave to the Giants to move up to get Justin Fields, which means a future first-round pick and a pick here in the second or third round this year. I think probably the third, because I don't know if the Steelers have a second-round pick. Well, regardless, a trade package that is beneficial to the Bears. And I do think that this is and even if the Bears don't trade back at 10, I think Shedeur Sanders is the pick at 12. I really, really do. It makes Jerry Jones does not want his team to be boring. He does not want his team to be boring. Shedeur Sanders and Deion Sanders for the next 5 to 10 years. That's exactly what Jerry Jones wants.
And it's funny because he couldn't quite go out there and hire Deion this year because Shedeur could go earlier. And then maybe Deion wouldn't have like if Shedeur ended up going to,
well, he'd have no leverage. Like if they had hired Deion and then it's almost obvious they're doing everything they can to trade up to 3 with who? The New York Giants, their division rival. How much would it cost Dallas to get Shedeur Sanders? Now they can play some smoke and mirrors.
Yeah. Otherwise, yeah. And I ended up
Stanley in the chat saying trade down with Dallas. Exactly. You get to 10. And now it's Dallas versus Steelers for Shedeur Sanders. And if Dallas wants to move up to 10, give us a 3rd round pick.
Yeah, I think in the piece that I wrote, I think I had to take them. I had them taking Hampton, the running back, just because sometimes I don't want to fight with the editors. And they're like, it's not like it's my own blog. But I do think that the idea of Shedeur Sanders, I love it. And I was honestly, I was on it. I researched it. I wanted to see how much it would cost the Cowboys. And I still think it's a long shot, but at the same time, but when you look at the history of the Dallas Cowboys and you think about things like they were on the clock when Johnny Manziel was still available and they drafted Zach Martin. So there's a lot of fun things to talk about.
And people say Dallas, oh, they traded for Joe Milton. Yeah, Joe Milton is going to stop them from the Deion Shedeur Sanders package. Come on,
part
guys.
Of the smoke screen.
Yeah, Joe Milton. Jeez, guys.
Although they did give up a 3rd round pick, which is more than the Bears got for Justin Fields. Not a knock against Justin Fields, but this is I think how highly regarded you. That was ultimately the thing. But I think that the Cowboys go there. What about this one though? You know what's interesting? Because I truly believe that Tyler Warren does not get out of the first or does not get to us. I think Genty goes. I had Genty going 3 to the Giants. It's not a predictions piece though. Oh, that's right. Because mine isn't a predictions piece. Mine is a recommendation. And so I don't know that I would recommend. I think it's fun as I think the Cowboys could end up doing it. I think the Cowboys should take the running back. I think they should take Hampton because I need that for my fantasy team. You know what I'm saying? Like we need more viable fantasy options at the running back position. But I do think, like when I look at this and I'm like, I think the Giants should take Ashton Genty because they just should, because they need to make people forget that Saquon's playing for the Eagles. Not that people will forget, but you got to go out there and make those you got to be fun now, Giants. Like there's nothing. You're not saving your job by taking Travis Hunter, so you might as well go with Ashton Genty. I think the Jags should take Tyler Warren. I think that makes way too much sense for them. They have to take Tyler Warren to go with Brian Thomas Jr., help out Trevor Lawrence. I honestly believe, like, if you think about Carolina sitting at number 8, and I know that Loveland is another highly regarded tight end, and it's crazy to think that 2 tight ends could go in the top 7. But we saw what happened last year with Brock Bowers and everything, and how much, and a couple of years ago with Sam Laporta doing so well for the Lions. Like, outside of Kyle Pitts, most of these guys really hit. So this could really just kind of energize this draft board. And I'm like, you know what? And I always kind of arrange this to be like, well, oh my God, look, Mason Graham's available at number 10. Mm-hmm. Would your dream of drafting a tackle end if somehow Mason Graham made it down to number 10?
Well, my agenda has jumped around so much this
I know it's hard to keep track of.
And it started with Ashton Genty right when the offseason started. That was my agenda. Then my agenda moved to Mason Graham, where I was doing the bit where I say funny things that are misinformation about him to try to drive his draft stock down, like he puts ketchup on his hot dogs, or Mason Graham hates puppies, or whatever you want to think. And so similar to what Brad from San Fran was doing with Kyle Shanahan. And so, of course. And so That was my one of my early stage agendas, and now I've moved into trench drunk, and I want the offensive lineman. I want Banks. I want Will Campbell. Fine. But if they end up with Mason Graham because he falls to 10, I said to some friends that I thought that could exercise the ghost of Jalen Carter past, right?
Oh,
And you have an opportunity for lightning to strike twice for you. And I think he would be a game wrecker and somebody the Bears have sorely missed here the last few years because of that decision to draft Darnell Wright over Jalen Carter, who is a very good player. And maybe the stars just align this time around. And so, I won't be mad at that at all. I mean, when you're trench drunk, trenches include the defensive line as well. And that's where I think the Bears need to focus, whether it's D-line or O-line. These skill positions are fun, and it's fun to talk about, and it's fun to dream about. But this team you win in the trenches. The Philadelphia Eagles dominated the trenches against the dynasty Kansas City Chiefs, made them look as bad as they've ever looked in a football game. And the Bears and a lot of teams in the NFL need to follow suit, or the Eagles could keep winning some Super Bowls here going forward. You got to beef up your trenches, and they've done that to an extent. When you were asking earlier about how these corners going to fit with Dennis Allen, well, they're only going to be as good as how that pass rush gets home. And you've got Andrew Billings and Grady Jarrett, two veteran, defensive tackles. How long are they going to be mainstays there in the middle of the defensive line? You do have Javon Dexter, who has continued to get better, and you hope that there's a big jump for Dexter this year. But you add Mason Graham to that equation, and now you got a couple young guys to work with. Obviously, Zach Pickens still has a long way to go to earn his reps. But overall, Mason Graham, man, hey, sign me up, run to the podium, cash it in. I'd have no problem with that pick.
Yeah, I feel the same way, and I think that would be way, way too valuable to pass out, especially when you still have 2 second-round picks that you can use. You can still use those on the offensive line as well if you wanted to go there, but I think that Mason Graham, comparatively to other defensive linemen, compared to the drop-off between the offensive linemen, I think it's too great, and you go into it. I'm looking more and more away from Tyler Warren, Ashton Genty type of situation, instead realizing it's going to be, I really do believe it's going to end up being defense, because they did. I mean, not that they didn't spend money on the defense with Odangbo and obviously Ashton Genty, or not
Grady Jarrett. Yeah.
Grady Jarrett, excuse me. But it's like, I still think that they want that big time impact player and a rotational piece as well. Somebody who can go out there. And that was the great thing about the Eagles, is just having a carousel of defenders that you can just kind of run out there, and they go out there and they put pressure on the quarterback, make themselves a nuisance to opposing quarterbacks. I do, before we go today, did you see the thing? Was this AI generated where Jaden Daniels was trying to put that thing in the Louvre? Did you see this by any chance?
Mm-mm.
Good. I don't even want to talk about it then.
Wait, put what in the Louvre?
Jaden Daniels. I don't know if this was a joke or not, and I should have sent this over to our boys. That there was a thing where he was in France. Do I have this? This is where I should have been more produced. I've also got by the way, if anybody here is in the Southern California area, I will be in Rancho Santa Margarita Friday night on a comedy show. It was posted on the NFL Instagram account. It's Jaden Daniels holding up a photo of the of the Hail Mary, trying to literally put it in the Louvre.
Jeez Louise.
I really am starting to wonder, like, this is a team, not that it was a fluke, and I don't want the Commander fans to come after me and be like, "Oh, you're a hater," but I'm like, you know what? Like, things worked out really well for you. And a couple of years ago, there's teams like the Titans or whatever who make miracle runs to the title game, get exposed because they're not at that level, and then they just kind of fall into the past, fall aside. I want that for the Commanders so bad. Just because.
Yeah, let that be their Super Bowl. Let that be the thing that they talk about forever and ever as a regular season win over a team that lost 10 games in a row. Let that be what they hang their hat on. And Bears fans who are going to continue to do the prove it thing, we let that go all the way into November and December. And like Jaylon Johnson said, when we start winning games in November and December that get us to January, then we can start with the hype. And if Jaden Daniels wants that was an amazing play. It'll be played. If there's a montage of the NFL, that's, and shows the greatest plays in a minute stretch.
Alcoa presents fantastic finishes.
Right. That's going to make the reel. Okay. But the Bears, it's been so long since the Bears have had any kind of playoff success or even appearances. And I think we're looking for a bit more than a lucky strike, in the regular season, as fun as those moments are. And certainly I'll take a few of those next year, but we're waiting on a playoff appearance here in Chicago. That's what I'll put a Super Bowl championship in the Louvre one day. I will say before we go, and I wrote it down for next week because I liked this exercise that we did with the Dallas Cowboys potentially drafting Shedeur Sanders or the Steelers trading up for him, or maybe both teams trading up. So I wrote down, because we got to go. I know we got to go, but I wrote down a crazy trade scenario for the Bears for next week, and I'm going to save it. I know you're going to be on CHGO Bears on Friday. Yep. I'm not going to spoil it on Friday. I'm going to save it for this program.
Am I?
What?
No,
unless you can't, but of course you're always welcome. But I'm going to save this trade up scenario for next week as we get closer to the NFL draft, because I think these are good exercises as opposed to continuing to talk about, the same 5 things, that are going to happen at 10 that we've been doing over the last couple months. I can't wait. 2 weeks away from the draft where we finally get our answers and stop talking in hypotheticals. But I'm more than happy to stretch our imagination a little wider, have a little broader spectrum.
Can't wait. That is a great tease for next week's show, because who knows if we'll be back. Last week, we were very lucky to get Scott Bear of Marquee to come in for us. Who knows who we might be able to get in over the next couple of days. But at the very least, we'll be back next week for another edition of Take It to the Rank. So until that time, he's Greg. I'm Adam. Thank you so much. And Shane, go ahead and play us out.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast with Adam Rank on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts.